So this is Pope Francis's latest encyclical, and this comes from the Vatican webpage. Encyclical letter, Fratelli Tutti, of the Holy Father Francis on fraternity and social friendship. In actual fact, this is a document on Catholic social doctrine, but it's very well disguised, very well disguised. So let us jump right into it. And he starts with Fratelli Tutti, with these words. So St. Francis of Assisi addressed his brothers and sisters and proposed to them a way of life marked by the flavor of the gospel. Of the counsels Francis offered, I would like to select the one in which he calls for a love that transcends the barriers of geography and distance and declares, "Blessed all those who love their brother as much as when he is far away from him as when he is with him." So he starts with this. So his role model is St. Francis of Assisi. Now, I have a problem with that from the word go, because my role model is Jesus Christ.
Yes.
And that would be the starting point where I would start. Point number 2, he says, this saint of fraternal love, simplicity and joy, who inspired me to write the encyclical Laudato Si. So he refers back to Laudato Si. You cannot separate the two. So the one deals with the environment, the other one deals with humanity. And the two have to go together. Prompts me once more to devote this new encyclical to fraternity and social friendship. Francis felt himself a brother to the sun, the sea, and the wind, yet he knew that he was even closer to those of his own flesh. Now, my young brother, what is that?
Pantheism.
Pantheism.
At its best.
Who was Laudato Si, speckled with pantheism.
Yes.
This is a pantheistic religion. It is an earthbound pantheistic religion where man sets himself up as his own deity. This is a very dangerous opening statement. Wherever he went, he sowed seeds of peace and walked alongside the poor, the abandoned, the infirm, and the outcast, the least of his brothers and sisters. Now this sets the tone for Catholic social doctrine. Christ came to save all of humanity. And Jesus said, the poor will be with you always. And there are discrepancies in the world which are not fair. But the way in which they use the situation, which they often create themselves, is what is scary. And then he starts off by talking about without borders. No borders. He says, Francis did not wage a war of words aimed at imposing doctrines. He simply spread the love of God. He understood that God is love, and those who abide in love abide in God, quoting 1 John 4:16. In this way, he became a father to all and inspired the vision of a fraternal society. Now, the problem with this sentence is that this is how many people believe today. All you need is to preach about the love of Jesus. Nothing else. Or maybe just love. And leave out Jesus.
Yes.
And that doctrines are a problem. That's why Francis did not wage a war of words aimed at imposing doctrines.
Because it causes division.
It causes division. And Pope Francis said, take away the doctrine, right? So they don't want doctrine. They want their social theology. Now, their social theology will only work, of course, if there are enough poor people that they can get on board. So the poorer they can make society, the more likely they are to succeed in getting the power that they want.
Yes.
This was a very dangerous precedent. Now, again, he refers to Laudato Si. In the preparation of Laudato Si, I had a source of inspiration in my brother Bartholomew, the Orthodox patriarch. Then he says he had this grand Imam, Ahmad al-Tayyib. He was also a source of inspiration. We met in Abu Dhabi, and the present encyclical takes up and develops some of the great themes raised in the document that the Imam and he signed together. So this has all been prepared beforehand.
Yes.
And the mega religions of the world seem to be on board.
Yes.
Right?
That's the Muslim.
Have you ever been to the Middle East? Have you ever been to these countries in the Middle East?
No.
Well, there you have a massive divide between the rich and the poor. So it is a very fertile ground for Catholic social doctrine. Yes. So as would be poorer countries, third world countries, whether they be in Africa, whether they be in South America. The target is Protestant countries that have developed a form of affluence which is not compatible with the rest of the world. And that has to be brought down, because that is the way in which you control humanity, right? Now, if you understand this, then you will see where they're actually heading. Of course, he has to bring in the COVID-19 pandemic and the reasons why we need rapid change. Anyone who thinks that the only lesson to be learned was the need to improve what we were already doing, or to refine existing systems and regulations, is denying reality. We need change. The new normal.
Yeah. The Great Reset.
We have to go to the Great Reset. So globalization and progress without a shared roadmap won't work. You need a shared roadmap. Very good. Well, where's it going to lead? And he talks about pandemics and other calamities in history. True, a worldwide tragedy like the COVID-19 pandemic momentarily revived the sense that we are a real global community, all in the same boat, where one person's problems are the problems of all. Once more, we realize that no one is saved alone. We can only be saved together.
Sure.
That's interesting. Collective salvation. Is there such a thing in the Bible?
No.
No.
You can only work out your own salvation.
Work out your own salvation with fear and trembling. So what they're really talking about is getting rid of your individuality for the sake of the common good.
Yeah.
As I said in those days, the storm has exposed our vulnerability and uncovered those false and superfluous certainties around which we constructed our daily schedules, our projects, our habits, and our priorities. Amid this storm, the facade of those stereotypes with which we camouflaged our egos, always worrying about appearances, has fallen away, revealing once more the ineludible and blessed awareness that we are part of one another, that we are brothers and sisters of one another. We're all one. Communism has everybody even wearing the same clothes.
Driving the same car.
Driving the same car, everything is the same. Individuality is something that must be faded out. If you look at human appearances, are there two people that are alike, even twins? Are they absolutely the same?
No.
So is God a God of variety, or is God a God of singularity?
Variety.
God willing, after all this, we will think no longer in terms of them and those, but only us. If only this may prove not to be just another tragedy of history from which we have learnt nothing. This COVID is going to be used to the uttermost to achieve an objective.
This new normal.
The new normal. An absence of human dignity on the borders. Certain populist political regimes as well as certain liberal economic approaches, maintain that an influx of migrants is to be prevented at all costs. Who is he talking about again?
The United States.
The United States. And any other country that refuses to take migrants.
Yes. They had a big issue in Europe.
A big one in Germany and all over the world. This is a major issue. But the Pope has always maintained that we have to have migrants. We have to mix the cultures. I'm wondering whether he wants to mix cultures or whether he wants to mix religions. Because cultures come with religions. Migration, more than ever before, will play a pivotal role in the future of our world. He's going to mix. Article 46 here. We should also recognize that destructive forms of fanaticism are at times found amongst religious believers, including Christians. He likes to throw that in there. And what was his greatest gripe with Christians? The Christian
Fundamentalists, true Bible believers.
True Bible believers. And they define it. Anybody who believes in a literal creation, who believes that Jesus atoned for our sins, etc.
Is a fundamentalist.
Yes, who believes in a literal resurrection, all of those issues. They are the enemy of the world.
Yeah, they're terrorists.
It's interesting that the imams and everybody was so interested in this encyclical. And then there's this interesting heading, Neighbors Without Borders. This is definitely globalism on a grand scale. So let us return to promoting the good. What good?
Common good.
Common good. Every society needs to ensure that values are passed on. Otherwise, what is handed down are selfishness, violence, corruption in its various forms, indifferent, and ultimately a life closed to transcendence and entrenched in individual interests. Individuality must go. We need common values, common good.
It's like you said in the previous episode, the freedom of religion is just as long as it coincides with common good.
Absolutely. And if we do not understand this buttery language in which it is written will confuse people. If you don't understand the agenda behind papal thinking, you will miss the point of what he is writing. Those who enjoy a surplus of water, yet choose to conserve it for the sake of the greater human family, have attained a moral stature that allows them to look beyond themselves and the group to which they belong. How marvelously human! The same attitude is demanded if we are to recognize the rights of all people, even those born beyond our borders. Again, this is humanism. God is left out of the picture. The common destination of created goods. Now it gets interesting. This led them to realize that if one person lacks what is necessary to live with dignity, it's because another person is detaining it. This is a very interesting way of thinking. So if you have something and another person doesn't have, you are at fault because you have. Not the other person because he doesn't bother to attain it. Well, there are some that can't attain it and they have to be taken care of, true. But this is typical social doctrine of the Roman Catholic Church. St. John Chrysostom summarizes it in this way. Not to share our wealth with the poor is to rob them and take away their livelihood. In other words, if you own something, you are a thief. The riches we possess are not our own, but theirs as well. In the words of St. Gregory the Great, when we provide the needy with their basic needs, we are giving them what belongs to them, not to us. No. This is not biblical thinking.
No.
If you provide the needy with the means to be able to take care of themselves. If you educate people, if you give them incentives to work and to attain, then they don't have to find the riches in someone else's house. This is a reflection of rerum novarum. We will talk about that in a moment. This is Catholic social thinking at its best, or in my opinion, at its worst. Now he quotes John Paul II. For my part, I would observe that the Christian tradition has never recognized the right to private property as absolute or inviolable.
Okay.
This is Catholic social doctrine. We will go into that. And has stressed the social purpose of all forms of private property. In Roman Catholic thinking, you are allowed to possess property, but the property is not your own. It is there for social advancement. If you take it to an extreme case, like they do in some countries in the world, if you own a piece of land and others have need of it, they may occupy it.
Yeah.
It's your social duty then to provide it because you possess it. It's probably also your social duty to continue paying the dues on the land. Now, this gets very interesting. So it says the common use of created goods is the first principle of the whole ethical and social order. Now, this is very fascinating. So if you own something, you only own it for the social good. Yeah.
So nothing you own is actually yours. If you drive
Nothing
a car, then
it's
somebody
not your car.
it's not your car.
If someone has need of it, he can take it. It is natural and inherent right that takes priority over others. All other rights having to do with the goods necessary for the integral fulfillment of persons, including that of private property or any other type of property, should, in the words of St. Paul VI, in no way hinder this right, but should actively facilitate its implementation. You don't own anything. He's referring to the encyclicals of Pope John Paul II. He's referring to the encyclicals of Paul VI. We'll have to have a quick look at those. In no way hinder this right, but should actively facilitate its implementation. The right to private property can only be considered a secondary natural right, derived from the principle of the universal destination of created goods. This has concrete consequences that ought to be reflected in the workings of society. Yet it often happens that secondary rights displace primary and overriding rights, in practice making them irrelevant. So a major company will provide the housing, and you become basically a slave to the company. That the company then takes the place of the elite landowners of ancient times, the nobles.
Yeah.
So we have the same system. Rights without borders. No one then can remain excluded because of his or her place of birth, much less because of privileges enjoyed by others who were born in lands of greater opportunity. The limits and borders of individual states cannot stand in the way of this. So if you have become a rich nation because you are a hard-working people, then you have to give that away to the poorer people.
Yeah.
You have to. This is Catholic social doctrine. Everybody has to be equal. Any head that pops up above the others should be lopped off.
Yeah.
Development must not aim at the amassing of wealth by a few, but must ensure human rights, personal and social, economic and political, including the rights of nations and of peoples. So what applies to the individual applies to the nations. So capitalism, in all its forms, must disappear. We need a synthesis.
Church and state.
Church and state together. You have private property, but only under a social mortgage. And anything that you own is not yours.
Yeah.
So the right to private property is always accompanied by the primary and prior principle of the subordination of all private property to the universal destination of earth goods, and thus the right of all to their use. You have nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Now, is this biblical?
No.
No. Do we have a story in the Bible where a government wanted to take away the land of a private landowner?
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember the story of Ahab
Yes.
and Naboth's vineyard?
Yeah.
And Ahab wanted the vineyard.
Yes.
And Ahab said, I want this vineyard. And Naboth said to him, I'm sorry. This is my inheritance. From whom?
From God.
From God.
Yeah.
This is my God-given right. It is not yours. Do you remember who said to him, don't worry, I'll get it for you?
Jezebel.
Jezebel. And Jezebel serves as a type of whom?
The Roman Catholic Church.
Aha, how do we know? Because if you go to the middle church in the book of Revelation, there is Jezebel, who is tolerated by the church. She is dealing in purple and
Yes.
red, the colors of the Roman Catholic Church. She is the one who says, I'll get it for you. So who's mightier, the king or Jezebel?
Jezebel.
Jezebel. His countenance was sad, the Bible says. And Jezebel, what did she do? She had him murdered.
killed him.
She killed him. So do you think governments can sometimes sanction the killing of people who own land?
Yes.
Do you think it could happen? By whose instigation?
The church.
By Jezebel.
Yeah. Roman
So
Catholic
this
Church.
is what we're seeing here.